Are we alone in the universe? Space expands ever outwards for billions of light years in every direction, and past that horizon, likely even farther. Yet, our pale blue dot seems to be the only area with life. Our planet appears to be the only place where the universe can be aware of its own magnitude and emptiness. It doesn't seem logical. As rational humans, we're hesitant to fall into the trap of our ancestors, with the misguided belief that we are somehow in a more elevated plane of existence than anything around us. In the past, we believed that we were made to rule over all life on Earth. We believed that the sun circled around us. We believed we were the center of the universe. We can now see the falsity of our vain beliefs, and science has since tried to work this mediocrity into our view of the universe. Yet, we seem to be mistaken once more, as all evidence suggests that we're the only intelligent life within billions of light years. The Fermi Paradox is a famous question that asks, where is everybody? This means that since the universe is so old and so large, then why do we not see any evidence of more advanced civilizations? Many people know about the famous Drake equation, n equals r times f sub p times n sub e times f sub l times f sub I times f sub c times l, where n is the number of actively communicating intelligent extraterrestrial species. To quote Dr. Sandberg from the Future of Humanity Institute and his colleagues at Oxford, quote, R is the rate of star formation per year, f sub p is the fraction of stars with planets, n sub e is the number of Earth-like or otherwise habitable planets per system with planets, f sub l is the fraction of such planets with life, f sub I is the fraction with life that develop intelligence, f sub c is the fraction of intelligent civilizations that are detectable/contactable, and L is the average longevity of such detectable civilizations in years, end quote. According to Frank Drake's estimates, the scientist who devised the Drake equation, the galaxy should be teeming with life. However, with our current scientific knowledge, the Drake equation is not an accurate estimate by any means. Drake himself was optimistic with his numbers, and as a recent paper from the professors at Oxford states, quote, we have seen that a Fermi paradox arises if we combine a high and extremely confident prior for the number of civilizations in our galaxy with the absence of evidence for their existence. The high confidence that causes this clash typically results from applying a Drake-like model using point estimates for the parameters. These estimates, however, make implicit knowledge claims about processes, especially those connected with their origin of life, which are untenable given the current state of scientific knowledge, end quote. So while we know that the Drake equation is not a valid solution, many people still believe there should be civilizations which are older and more advanced than us throughout our own and nearby galaxies. When people consider the Fermi paradox, there are some knee-jerk responses that fall flat when truly analyzed. A common response is, we just can't hear them yet. This is the idea that their technology is so advanced that we would be unable to hear a signal even if it was aimed directly at us. At first glance, it seems logical. For example, if someone tried to send a text to a person in the 1800s, there would be no means for the other person to receive it. This line of thinking is the same one that the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI, uses. Nathaniel Tellis and Geoffrey Marcy wrote in the Publications of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, quote, during the past 65 years, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI, has proceeded with innovative attempts to detect the generation of light from civilizations residing elsewhere in the universe, end quote. However, this does not explain why no one would send a signal using radio waves to teach us how to build a more advanced technology. To an advanced civilization, our signals would be difficult to miss. And if we received letters from the 1800s, we could easily send one back teaching them how to build a cell tower. Maybe they don't allow it. This idea of laws that prevent aliens from communicating with us, the Prime Directive from Star Trek being an example, is also dead on arrival. Any solution requiring every member from every alien civilization to follow certain laws violates the non-exclusivity principle. This principle was first proposed by Glenn David Brin, a science fiction author with degrees in astronomy, philosophy, and applied physics. He wrote, quote, we are tempted to add one more rather tentative principle, a principle of non-exclusiveness, which states that diversity will tend to prevail unless there exists a mechanism to enforce conformity, end quote. Back to our previous analogy. If we receive letters from the 1800s and the government banned us from replying, can we really guarantee that every single person would follow that? Additionally, who's to say that no one from another country would try replying? People in general do not have a great track record with following laws. Maybe they fear making themselves known in case some older, more malevolent civilization is waiting to attack. However, this begs the question, why is this malevolent civilization hiding? Any more advanced civilization could destroy us whether we knew about them or not. And once you've sent your first signal out, something we've already done, there's no use hiding anymore. Additionally, there's no reason to hide in the first place. A truly malevolent civilization could sterilize planets that had the potential for life long before any life on it could even look up at the stars. Maybe every civilization that ever lived is already dead. It makes sense, but that isn't really what the Fermi Paradox is about. The paradox is concerned with why we can't see any evidence of other civilizations, whether or not they're ruins or current technology. If humans disappeared tomorrow and a new species rose to intelligence, taking our place, it would be clear that someone had been there before them. Beyond buildings, which might deteriorate, we've had a permanent impact on how things grow. For example, in Europe, fields have grown in bizarre folds due to plowed farms that were abandoned during the plague. Our more advanced technology has caused an even greater, more widespread impact on the planet that a future civilization could clearly see. This trend should continue to where an intelligent, starfaring civilization should leave evidence of that all throughout the Milky Way. And yet, it isn't there. What exactly should we be seeing? There would be completely empty patches of space caused by civilizations building solar panels and habitats around their stars and the stars near them. This type of structure is called a Dyson sphere. Though Dr. Sertovic, a research associate of the Astronomical Society of Belgrade, says, quote, "I don't think they're inevitable. They're simply a good idea for a subset of civilizations with some characteristics similar to those we envision in the future of humanity. I see two possible wide options for not building a Dyson sphere. One, civilizations either get destroyed by natural or technological catastrophes before developing technologies necessary for building a Dyson sphere, or perhaps two, there are civilizations which are extremely energy efficient, maybe those evolving in places similar to our outer solar system, say on a Titan-like body, and far from the solar gravitational well," end quote. However, it's a lot harder to completely wipe out an intelligent civilization than movies would allow one to believe. Additionally, outside the gravitational well in the outer edges of the solar system, it's questionable as to whether life could ever evolve there, as it's far from the habitable zone. Wesley A. Traub, in an article for Access Science, defined the habitable zone as an area, quote, "between a runaway greenhouse with hot water vapor at the inner edge and a barely sustainable greenhouse with cold water vapor and CO2 at the outer edge. In the present solar system, the narrow habitable zone runs from 0.95 to 1.68 astronomical units, that is, from the Venus-Earth rays to just outside the orbit of Mars at 1.52 astronomical units," end quote. Humanity has the technology to start constructing a Dyson sphere now and will have to do so in the future to accommodate our growing population and need for energy. Maybe there is evidence in the monuments of our past. The idea that extraterrestrials have visited us in the past has been mocked for a long time, mainly due to the popularity of the History Channel show Ancient Aliens. The fact that it's so ridiculed much more than the other solutions isn't very fair, but like the others, it still doesn't hold up to logic. The pyramids are one of the most famous examples that people claim must have been built by aliens, but I believe Isaac Arthur said it best.
We've known for a long time that the pyramids, or various megaliths, were quite buildable by technology available to their builders, and folks often would say how they did it was a mystery, because a given entirely scholastic article would say so, but not because that scholar thought their existence was mysterious, but because they weren't sure which of a dozen plausible methods was the one used. So rather than pointing out that there were a ton of ways they could have done it, and we just weren't sure which of those they used, or maybe something else, that mystery gets kicked around as a total one, that we have no clue how they did it at all, rather than which method.
Honestly, it's insulting to our ancestors to take away their technological achievements. They were not stupid, and they had plenty of free time to work out how to build these amazing structures. One also has to keep in mind that they were not always successful either. It was truly a process of trial and error. Sylvia M. Al-Kadlabowski, an archaeologist and former professor at Paradise Valley Community College, says, quote, "They started out as step pyramids before attempting what we consider a proper pyramid. King Snefru at Dashur built the first true pyramid with disastrous results. Poor guy tried 3 times. As the first one collapsed, the second became known as the bent pyramid, and his final attempt was the red pyramid," end quote. Our wonder at the perfection of the pyramids is a sort of survivorship bias, as the ones we still have today were the ones that were the strongest, thereby not reflecting their failures. Regarding the importance of the location of the 3 pyramids, they were built there because it was near the quarry the stone was mined. They are laid out like that because after the construction of the Pyramid of Khufu, his son, Khafre, wanted to build an even greater pyramid with less work. So he built it on top of a natural rock formation in order for it to look taller without needing as much of a base. If aliens did help build the pyramids, shouldn't it seem odd that they only used materials that our ancestors had? We have never dug up some sort of long-buried forklift. but we have found numerous stone tools and writings showing that it was people who worked hard building the past's greatest achievements. It also begs the question, if they were here before, where did they go? Maybe they actively visit us now. Again, this idea is often mocked more so than it deserves. Unlike nearly every other Fermi Paradox solution, it has evidence. The issue is that the more advanced the equipment and the more scientific the process, the less evidence there is, and so we have to conclude that the first-person accounts and grainy videos have some other explanation. Additionally, the idea that our government is hiding the evidence also doesn't make sense. An intelligent interstellar civilization would not be so dumb as to let their equipment or citizens be captured by our government. We have to keep in mind that this is a highly advanced species. It would be even more absurd than a tribe of cavemen capturing a unit of the Green Berets. This is the one Fermi Paradox solution that has the answer actively taking place on Earth, and the scientific evidence just is not there. So after all that, we have to conclude that there are no advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. Something about our planet or the steps that life has taken to reach this point is so astronomically uncommon that nobody exists or has existed that has been more advanced than us. This is called the rare Earth hypothesis and the great filter. Dr. Sirkovic defined the rare Earth hypothesis in his book, writing, quote, "The rare Earth hypothesis argues that the emergence of Earth-like complex biospheres are rare at all times," end quote. Now we already know that the majority of other planets are not like Earth. The first example that comes to mind is our location in the habitable zone. However, there are many other things we believe make our planet unique, such as not being in a binary star system, a stable sun, having a Jupiter-mass planet in our solar system, a large moon, distance from stars at risk for going supernova, and plate tectonics. These and dozens of others would result in an extreme improbability of any other intelligent technological life evolving nearby. This is expanded upon in the Great Filter, which focuses on evolutionary steps such as secondary endosymbiosis, the jump to multicellular life, an extinction event to pave the way for mammals, having a companion species like dogs, the discovery of fire, the switch to agriculture, or the birth of metallurgy. Additionally, just because a species is intelligent does not mean that they are automatically going to develop technology. In his video on rare intelligence, Isaac Arthur says,
The octopus is an intelligent creature in that it is good at problem solving and can learn and apply that knowledge. Recent genetic evidence says their intelligence evolved around 400 million years ago. Why then are they not the dominant species, having had such a long evolutionary head start on us? Perhaps it comes down to them lacking those traits I mentioned. They are solitary, live in an ocean where fire is not an option, and have short lives.
One has to keep in mind that the Fermi Paradox does not focus on extraterrestrial species less technologically advanced than us, but only as to why we do not see evidence of more advanced civilizations. The idea of these solutions is that either one of these steps, or all of them put together, make the conditions needed for intelligent life to be exceedingly rare. However, we cannot overlook the fact that the greatest filter might be yet to come. At this moment, we can only detect life more advanced than us, unless it is incredibly close by. We imagine that if life was common, it should have existed on other planets before it did on our own. There is what is called the Doomsday Hypothesis, which Kevin Korb and Jonathan Oliver wrote in a paper published by Oxford, quote, "The Doomsday argument maintains that reflection upon the number of humans born thus far, when that number is viewed as having been uniformly randomly selected from amongst all humans, past, present, and future, leads to a dramatic rise in the probability of an early end to the human experiment," end quote. Some common suggestions for these are nuclear war, climate change, or a new technology that seemed harmless but actually caused the demise of life. This argument is pessimistic, and though we can't disprove it, as I mentioned previously, completely wiping out every member of a post-evolutionary species is a lot harder than one would expect. Even if there were some survivors, knocked back to hunter-gatherer levels, they would eventually reach the point where we are today quicker than our ancestors did. They would have relics of our modern civilization. They would not be reinventing the wheel, just reverse engineering it, and that is a lot easier to do. However, say this did occur. What's stopping them from wiping themselves out again? This concept, called a cyclic apocalypse, doesn't really work either, since as I wrote before, they would have artifacts from the past civilization, and if time and time again they saw those relics reach a point in technology and suddenly drop back off to being primitive again, it would make sense to check what was happening during those switches and then not do that again. So we have to conclude that we really are alone in the universe, but where does that leave us? It might seem depressing, scary, lonely, but it shouldn't. As we look up at the stars, the same stars our ancestors looked at centuries ago, the stars that have always seemed so impossibly far away, we know that our descendants will one day look up at those same stars, not as distant pinpricks in the sky, but as the next stopping point in their interstellar journey through the cosmos. Wesley A. Traub, in an article for Access Science, defines the habitable zone as, quote, nope. Wesley A. Traub, in an article for Access Science, defines the habitable zone as an area, quote, between a runaway greenhouse gas with hot water. No. One also has to keep in mind that they were not always successful either. It was truly a process of trial and error. Toil and error.